They're chasing everyone out of the roulette room." "Thanks, Benny," I said. "Thanks a lot." "Well, I knew you was working on that Howley case, and I thought this might be important, so I—" "Sure, Benny. Come by my office this afternoon, and thanks again." I hung up and started moving. Within 10 minutes, I was pulling up and parking across the street from the Golden Casino. I locked the car and dodged traffic to get across the street, as though I'd never heard of laws against jaywalking. There were still plenty of people in the casino. The bar was full, and the dice and card games were going full blast. Slot machines were jingling out their infernal din while fools fed coins into their insatiable innards. But the roulette room was closed, and a couple of Bestetsson deputies were standing guard over the entrance. I headed straight for them. Both of them stood pat, blocking my way, so I stopped a few feet in front of them. "Hello, counselor," said one. "Sorry, the roulette room's closed." I knew the man slightly. "Let me in, Jim," I said. "I want to see Thursby." The men exchanged glances. Obviously, the DA had given them orders. "Can't do it, counselor," said Jim. "We're not to let anyone in." "Tell Thursby I'm out here, and that I want to see him." He shrugged, opened the door, stuck his head inside, and called the District Attorney Thursby to tell him that I was outside. I could hear Thursby's muffled "damn" from within. But when he showed up at the door, his face was all smiles. "What's the trouble?" he asked pleasantly. I smiled back, giving him my best. "No trouble at all, Thursby. I just wanted to watch the experiment." "Experiment?" He looked honestly surprised, which was a fine piece of acting. "We're just checking to see if the table's wired, that's all. If it is, your client may be in the clear. Maybe we can hang it on the croupier." "And get a conspiracy charge on my client, too, eh?" "Well, if you don't mind, I'd like to watch that table check myself. You know how it is." Thursby hesitated. Then he scowled. "Oh, all right. Come on in, but stay out of the way." I grinned. "Sure. All I want to do is protect my client's interests." Thursby just grunted and opened the door wider to let me in. He was a shrewd lawyer, a good DA, and basically honest, even if he did have a tendency to bend under pressure from higher up. They were checking the table all right. They had 3 specialists going over it with everything from fine-tooth combs to Geiger counters. They found nothing. No magnets, no wires, no mechanical gimmicks. Nothing. It took them an hour to take that table apart, check it, and put it back together again. When it was all over, Thursby glanced at me, then said, "Okay, boys, that does it. Let's go." The men looked at him oddly, and I knew why. "Aren't you going to test my client's gadget?" I asked innocently. Thursby looked angrily baffled for a moment. Then he clamped his lips grimly. "As long as we're here, I guess we might as well." I knew perfectly well it was what he had intended to do all along. "One of you guys spin that wheel," he said to the technicians. One of them gave the wheel a spin and dropped the ball. It clattered on its merry way and dropped into a slot. 42. Thursby took the gadget out of his pocket. It was still set at 13. The men who had surrounded Howley on the night of his arrest had been keeping their eyes open, and they had seen how Howley had handled the thing. Well, almost how. Thursby had the lens opening pointed at the wheel, but his thumb and fingers weren't touching the silver plates properly. "Spin it again," he said. Everyone's eyes were on the ball as it whirled, so I had time to get my own copy of Howley's gadget out and set it at 13. I hoped the thing would work for me. I concentrated on 13, making sure my thumb and fingers were placed right. Evidently, they were. The ball fell into 13, black, odd, and low. A huge grin spread over Thursby's face, but he was man enough not to turn and grin at me. "Try it again," he said. 13, black, odd, and low. "I wonder how the thing works," said Thursby, looking at the gadget in a sort of pleased awe. "You'd better be able to prove that it does work, Thursby," I said, trying to put irritation in my voice. This time, he did grin at me. "Oh, I think we can prove that, all right." He turned back to the technician. "Spin it once more, Sam, and show the defense counsel here how it works." The technician did as he was told. 13, black, odd, and low, he chanted, grinning. "Let's try another number," Thursby said. He turned the dial to 1, and this time, when he pointed it, his fingers were touching the plates in the right places. "Just a minute," I said. "Let me spin the thing." "Be my guest, counselor," said Thursby. I spun the wheel and scooted the ball along the rim. It dropped into a slot. 1, red, odd, and low. I looked as disappointed and apprehensive as I could. "Coincidence," I said. "Nothing more. You haven't proved anything." Thursby's grin widened. "Of course I haven't," he said with a soothing, patronizing tone. "But I don't have to prove anything until I get to court." Then he looked at the technicians and jerked his head toward the door. "Let's go, boys. Maybe the counselor wants to look over the table for himself. Maybe he thinks we've got it rigged." There was a chorus of guffaws as they walked out. I just stood there, scowling, trying to keep from laughing even harder than they were. Jason Howley sat next to me at the defense table, just inside the low partition that divided the court from the public. There weren't many people in the auditorium itself. Listening to some poor dope get himself sentenced for cheating at gambling is considered pretty dull entertainment in the state of Nevada. Thursby had managed to push the indictment through the grand jury in a hurry, but as he sat across the room from me at the prosecution table, I thought I could detect a false note in the assumed look of confidence that he was trying to wear. Holly tapped me on the shoulder. I turned around and he whispered, "How much longer?" I tapped my wristwatch. "Couple minutes. Judge Lapworth is one of those precisionists, never a moment late or early. Getting jumpy?" He shook his head gently and smiled. "No, you've handled this even better than I'd have imagined. You've thought of things I didn't even know existed. I'm no lawyer. I can see that." I returned the smile. "And I don't invent gimmicks, either. So what?" His eyes looked at me from behind the distorting negative lenses. "I've been wondering, counselor, why are you so interested in this? I mean, I offered you a pretty good fee and all that, but it seems to me you're taking an unusual interest in the case." I grinned at him. "Mr. Howley, my profession is law, with a capital L. The study of law isn't like the study of physics or whatever. These are man-made laws, commands, not descriptions. They don't necessarily have anything to do with the facts at all. Take the word insanity, for instance. The word isn't even used by head shrinkers anymore, because it's a legal definition that has nothing whatever to do with the condition of the human mind. Now, any such set of laws as that can't possibly be self-consistent and still have some use on an action level. A lawyer's job is to find the little inconsistencies in the structure, the places where the pieces have been jammed together in an effort to make them look like a structured whole. To find, in other words, the loopholes and use them. And when I find a loophole, I like to wring everything I can out of it. I'm enjoying this." Holly nodded. "I see. But what if something—" I held up my hand to silence him because the door to the judge's chambers opened at that moment and Judge Lapworth came in as the bailiff announced him. We all stood up while the bailiff intoned his, "Oh yay, oh yay." Thursby made a short preliminary speech to the jury, and I requested and was granted permission to hold my own opening statement until the defense was ready to present its case. Thursby was looking worried, although it took a trained eye to see it. I was pretty sure I knew why. He had been pushed too hard and had gone too fast. He'd managed to slide through the grand jury too easily, and I had managed to get the trial date set for a week later. Thursby's case was far from being as tight as he wanted it. I just sat still while the prosecution brought forth its witnesses and evidence. The croupier, the deputies, several employees of the Golden Casino, and a couple of patrons all told their stories.